Hello everyone, welcome to session 8 of the day, Underutilized to Monetized, the business opportunity. This is Jason Allan Scott, serial entrepreneur and founder at Kopus. Over to you, Jason.
Hello, my name is Jason Allan Scott, and I feel like the world is moving too fast. At least it feels that way to me, and I often just want everything to slow down. I want a moment. I want a moment to breathe. I want to think of a simpler time. Call me nostalgic, and at the risk of dating myself like a fly caught inside amber, Jurassic Park reference, allow me to say it wasn't that long ago that music was something you went into a store for. Something you would pick up, something you would hold, something you would feel, something you would contemplate, you would think about, you would touch, you'd move around, you'd smell the very vinyl, you'd read the back, you'd wonder who the featured artists were. And if you were lucky, you'd go into a small booth and listen to it, all before making the purchase. And today, all of that is available on stream and online. Funny, just today, I was on the tube and I saw an advert on the wall of the station that simply said, remember when you tried on clothes before buying them. Your car is waiting, Uber. Well, due to the pandemic, we all stopped shopping offline. We stopped shopping in stores, and that was just a year ago. The truth is, just a year ago, I had friends who had never, ever shopped for clothes online. And it wasn't that long ago that our loved ones or family members would speak to us powerful words like, how are you? And I love you. And it was something that was said aloud on a device, plugged into a wall, that the average Gen Z would not be able to recognize today. It wasn't that long ago that turning 16 came with a driver's license and a set of car keys, not a TikTok account or an opportunity to speak your mind on Clubhouse. So much change amongst the crisis that we currently see. And is it not in change that we all feel unstable or unsettled? Now, just 13 years ago, I worked in venues, 2008, and that was a time much like today, shrouded in crisis. I felt like it was a time of two times, a good time and a bad time, the best of times and the worst of times. Nobody had money to spend on my venues, but the emergence of social network technologies and platforms creating social communication technologies was growing at a super fast speed. People, consumerism, connectivity, and communication became something to pay attention to, and that made it better times. The thing about 2008 and any time of crisis is truly, it's a time of revolution. It's those times where anything predictable, anything certain becomes uncertain and unpredictable. But that same time that gives us nothing to put our faith into. I didn't know if times would get better or worse. And a lot of us feel like that now. But the truth is we do have something to hold on to. And it's called history. We have history to fall back on. I have my own personal history. I'd seen the doom of apartheid in South Africa. I'd seen AIDS come and go. I'd seen a tsunami in Thailand and the after effects of a large wave. I was in not one, but two ISIS attacks. And there was a pattern. Times like the ones I've just mentioned and the ones we're in right now, they come to pass. They don't come to stay. But what follows them is accelerated change. Like the times before this in human history, in times pre-crisis, time moves pretty slow, if you will, in human years. But in times in crisis and times shortly after, it seems to move in dog years. And in these periods of change or crisis, everything changes. Our forms of government, our means of commerce, our modes of transportation, our materials of construction, and the distribution and creation of wealth. Not to mention where and how people work. Every world change has happened quickly in these compressed moments. And there's always a pattern in all these moments of history following crisis and these periods of crisis themselves. They always seem to coincide with two things: a new communication paradigm and a new energy paradigm. 10,000 years ago, energy was stored in a grain. And that is how we saw it. That is how we saw movement, and that is how we saw fuel. The grain allowed the horses to move. It's the grain that allowed us to move. It was the grain that stored value. And with that, our language changed. We went from spoken word to written language. So communication changed. And shortly after that, we had the industrial age. And the energy paradigm, pew pew, was the steam engine, the ability to harness power using this power, the power of steam. And the power of steam gave us the steam engine and steam factories. And the communication paradigm, the printing press. And everything changed. We moved from farm to factory, and wealth shifted from nobility to the merchant class. Everything changed. Now take your mind to 1870. The energy was oil, and oil allowed for the internal combustion engine. And the communication paradigm was the telephone I mentioned earlier that no one could recognize. The combustion engine made us more powerful by making us more portable, because it allowed the car and the airplane to get us anywhere. And with this communication paradigm of the telephone, we were now reachable to anyone in any destination, in any time zone. I could now get to them or speak to them anywhere, anytime, accessibly. And they were accessible. And again, everything changed. Work moved from the factory to the office. And this provided a sweeping change, a destabilizing change, which brings us to today. So for those of us, for those of you who feel unsettled by the recent year we've all just had, take comfort with me that we are once again in a period of change. Change like the ones I just mentioned, and the paradigms that are shaping this age are sustainability and network communications. Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Signal, Slack, Clubhouse, Snapchat, BitClout, OnlyFans, network communications that are connected in my pocket, buzzing periodically, connecting me to the millions of people around the world. It's no longer one-on-one with another on a phone connected to the world, connected through a wall. Now, I've made my living, and some might say a damn good one, with no tool other than my phone, WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, and a podcast. Literally, thanks to this small device, I am now connected to everyone, and I have the ability to work anywhere. You see, these two elements, sustainability and network communications, they weave themselves into the very DNA of every layer of society that is now being written. So this new crisis, what this is a new movement. And in any new movement of change, we will see wealth distribution. And dare I say it, opportunity. So although at times like these, you all may feel the world is rushing at us way too fast, we have to remind ourselves of the words of the great Missy Elliott, to flip it and reverse it, to rather than being the victim of change, have the opportunity to call ourselves change makers. And in these moments of crisis that we can't predict, let us not find opportunity to be scared, but find opportunity to be brave, to understand that certain things are just inevitable, that the time right now will be messy. Look at the transportation revolution in play right now. Right at the beginning of my talk, I mentioned Uber, invented in San Francisco in 1999. Well, 5 years later, the yellow cab industry that was the taxi industry for the whole of the United States of America, that had existed for 80 years prior, went bankrupt. We know these things will get messy. We saw Paris being attacked when Uber came in. We saw riots when 5G started implementation throughout the world. We saw outrage by the hotel industry when Airbnb came into new markets. We know that what is to come is also transformative. These years we are in now, these are not human years. These are dog years. These are dog years. These are dog times when things move fast and we completely change the plumbing of society. And again, I shall name drop Uber. Did you know that the taxi industry revenue in San Francisco in 2010 was $140 million? It was scalable, it was predictable, it was reliable. But just 5 years later, after Uber not only driven the entire yellow cabs industry bankrupt and out of San Francisco alone, it had made $500 million by 2014. We also know that today, the guiding light of sustainability, that is, dare I call it, this revolution that we're in, it's sustainable. It's also personal. These apps in our pocket make it uniquely personal. Uber is my personal driver, available at a few taps of the app that pick me up anywhere and anytime to take me where I need to go, simply, frictionlessly, taking me anywhere and anytime. Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Postmates, my personal chef. A few taps of the app and I can find food from anywhere in the area, delivered from fire to my door in minutes. Upwork, people per hour, Fiverr, my personal workforce. The ability to reach into my pocket and a few taps of the app, and employees somewhere on the planet can do a unit of work or a project. I can get an expert for hire that can do work quickly, efficiently, and remotely. AirBnB, my personal hotel, unlocking millions of properties around the world. And if you'll allow me to share mine with you right now, Kopus.com, my personal workplace or event space, my personal venue seeker, location scout, and real estate agent, ever out there on the lookout for the perfect office space, event space, or fit for purpose place to work and celebrate. Available on my time with the charge that they're happy with, the venue, and I'm happy with, the worker, the planner, in real time to be booked for how long I need without waiting for a quote or a site visit. And this is where I've landed in this time, in this space, in this here revolution. You see, as an event planner, as an ex-venue owner operator, I was always selling space as a service, space for parties, space for product launches, space for club nights and celebrations and commiserations, but also for providing my space for film locations, for studio time, for charity work. And Kopus.com is where my passion has now taken me. And a quick pro quo, though, I knew nothing about commercial real estate. And the truth is, you don't need to know anything. It's incredibly simple. And for those that don't know, allow me this moment to inform you. Commercial real estate owners, well, they just build buildings. And we put our companies in them. And the business model is we sign a long lease, usually 5 to 10 years plus, meaning companies that need to make things, they need to and make services, also need to make huge decisions. Where will I plant my company? Where will I be for the next 5 to 10 years? Where will I tell all my employees to come? For me, when I was 25, I started my first company. We were called OPM, Other People's Money, and we were growing fast. So I was told I needed to get an office. And back then, 5 years was the shortest lease I could find. I didn't know if we should, if we would even survive another month, another quarter, let alone another year to 5. But I signed. One huge loft-like floor, enough space to grow into. And spoiler alert, we didn't. We never even moved into half the space. All that extra real estate I was paying for simply went to waste, which reminds me of my first space that I ran in events as an owner-operator. I'd be paying for this space that was only being used 3 to 4 days a week, leaving multiple days and multiple hours that I was simply not running a monetization strategy for my underutilized assets. Now add injury to insult. On this space that I was paying for, I also had food and booze and the time of my staff was spending that I was just paying for, whether we were being used or not. Time, food, space, staff, rent, all perishable assets. And I'll tell you something else that you all already probably know. Work doesn't just happen in the spaces or workplaces anymore. It's not a place I go to. It's just something that I do. And regrettably, perhaps, I can reach out for the phone next to my bed in the early morning or before getting out of bed or before going to sleep. I can check my emails and I can answer client calls. And all of this is a shame. And I hope I'm not shaming you. Let's be honest. We all do it. Work now is everywhere because the internet is everywhere. The old model of space to fit a single purpose is over. Events went online last year. Pandora's box has been opened. Single serving space is stupid. There, I said it. Office for office workers, event space for events, galleries only for art, a home only for renting for yourself, and hotels only for sleeping and stuff. Insert naughty giggles here. Overnight is outdated and at very best wasteful. It is not sustainable. And let me tell you an old story that some of you might know incredibly well. It's about a teacher and a glass jar. The teacher walks into a class carrying this glass jar. She asks them, what can they see? The students, excited about this opportunity to speak aloud, scream, an empty jar. At least they did in my story. She said, I see. And she placed the jar down. She pulled from her bag a bunch of rocks and filled the jar up right till the top and said again, quick question, is this glass now full? To which the kids excitingly exclaimed, yes, teacher. The teacher smiled knowingly, reached into a bag and grabbed gravel and added the gravel, and the gravel filled the space between the rocks until it was full. And again, the teacher asked, is this glass full? And again, without hesitation, the kids excitingly screamed, yes. And again, she smiled. And this time added sand, and the sand fell between the gravel, between the rocks. And again, she held it up to class and said, is it full now? This time, the kids double checking and triple checking around the jar and looking around confirmed, yes, the jar is now full. And then she added the water. And everyone in the class began to laugh. The truth is, this is how we have been operating in our venues and our spaces for far too long. We have filled it with rocks, the space only to be a single serving place, only for product launches or celebrations, or restaurants that only serve meals at certain times, a photo studio only to take photos in. When the truth is, there's always been an opportunity to add gravel. And for many of us, gravel was catering. And for those of us that also added sand, we added something small like private dining, space for a birthday party. If the truth is that each time we believed we were full, we were not, well, that means that there is always plenty of opportunity for more. It is the first event professional, I was the first event professional in the UK to make $1 million in 12 months, from 0 to $1 million, from nothing. I kept finding uses for my space at every opportunity. And 4 years later, I did it again. I made $1 million in 5 months because I always saw the glass, not as the kids did, but as the teacher did. And right now, I'm telling you, just like the teacher told those kids, there is space for more for all of us. More workplaces for remote workers, for freelancers, for urban digital creatives, for the gig economy workers. Our venue landscape today is that glass, and the rocks, or how we try to fill the buildings, is just one thing that we do. And we're about to start what many economists are calling the next roaring 20s. Yet almost every site, venue, landscape that we have surveyed is at least 10% empty at any given time. Because we cannot fill the vessel with rocks alone. We need the gravel and the sand and the water. These empty sections and spaces that sit empty, underutilized, ready to be modernized and monetized. I'm here to tell you that these buildings, we're overpaying for these spaces. And surely what we have done is not sustainable, let alone effective. And worse than that is that not only is the business manager or property owner losing money, but people like me, desperate in 1997 for a workplace with long leases, just needed it for a couple of days, a couple of hours to test our theories, to test our products, our services, our hypotheses. And let's put on our Greta Thunberg lenses and look at things from a sustainable perspective. Or, for the capitalist in the audience, Let's look at it with an economic utilization standpoint. This is very, very inefficient. And if we go back into the Greta mode and look at the environment, the building model is inadequate in today's lens of true sustainability statistics. Did you know, as this is a USA and Canada talk, that you have 79% of the USA's electric consumption powers buildings? Let me say that again, and let me say it slow. 79% of the US electricity consumption powers nothing but buildings. And 39% of the world's carbon footprint is causing the global warming, affecting us all. 39% from buildings that are just sitting there, underutilized. In fact, even venues that are supposedly, quote unquote, 100% occupied, the reality is based on hundreds of surveys to the market that prove that the typical, let's call it hotel room for easy understanding, is underutilized even at 100%. It's only 30% of the time being used by the occupier. So what can you do? Well, the answer is clear. It's clear as the glass the teacher brought to class. We need to fill that glass. And I'm proud to say it's in play right now. The same apps you use are transforming real estate and venues like never before in a time we've seen. And the two big pieces we needed to fit the jigsaw are once again in motion: technology and network communications, to rethink how real estate and events, workplaces and meeting spaces, renting takes place. It starts with online. The internet is now. The internet is now where we can book offices, studio, and event locations. Bookings can and will happen online through technology. And the second piece, which, let's be honest, is far less sexy, but no less critical, the framework of the paperwork, the terms and conditions, the small print, all of that can be simplified. We can standardize. And this is not so far removed from what currently occurs at your local hotel when you agree to stay over. It's online. It's simple. It's end to end. And what does that look like? I'm happy to share that both workplaces and event spaces are embracing this new revolution. That spaces and places of all kinds are becoming available like that with a tap of the app. And companies of all kinds are putting up their space, placing their studio, event, or hospitality venue on platforms like Kopus.com, Kopus.com. And they, like Jurassic Park mentioned previously at the start of this talk, if you were paying attention, have found a way. The pandemic gave us the motivation, and likewise to the professionals on the go, the CEOs of startups, the freelancers, the writers, the bloggers, the YouTubers, the podcasters, the content creators, the photographers, the gig workers, the up workers, the Fiverr people, the people per hour, and the Etsy and Shopify generation, and the like. Well, they can now find a home to work, to create, to launch, to network, to make, to test, to share. So in these times of crisis and change, when the fabric of time is rewritten, human years and dog ears, oftentimes there is an old guard that is simply swept away. But like crypto, you can plot these things with peaks and troughs. I mentioned economists earlier. Well, today they're pointing at a peak in the disease of corona, at a time when simply the growth begins to slow and opportunity for change begin. And it exists in a larger quantity than the status quo to continue. It is with the advent of Uber and Google and Tesla working on autonomous cars that people are now talking about peak car manufacturing. and, if you will, allow me to put my passions applied into events and spaces as service and as an entrepreneur. Are not many things working in a similar way now in our very own events landscape? I think we can now look at this moment, this phenomena of peak single service purpose space, a space designed to do just one thing, for office space to be used just for office workers, space for event functions, just for event functions, meeting rooms, just for meetings, galleries, just for art, hotels, just for overnight accommodation, studios, just for photo shoots, sports hospitality suites, just for game seasons, and restaurants, just for the night or day in which they apply their trade. I ask if things like Kopus.com, the Airbnb of event space and workplaces is happening. Can we not characterize this time as the great revolution of monetizing the underutilized in a way that is sustainable? Is this not the time for us to share and to utilize and to harvest these spaces that already exist, that are already constructed, so that hopefully in the next 10, 20, or 50 years, someone on a stage or virtual presentation, much like this one, will look back at this current time that we're in now, look back for the future to then Back to the Future, age myself again, and say those people were the revolutionists. Those were the crazy ones. They were the bold. Those were the ones who said, let's not build anymore. Let's not be wasteful. Let's stop making for the sake of making. Let's make more with what we have. Maybe people in the future can look back and talk about how we made a better future for them, how we never let our humanity supersede our technology, but that we let our technology and sustainability work for us to weave a future that we could all be proud of. We all have the chance now to improve the present, to create more for ourselves with what we have, to take the underutilized and monetize. And as Halil the Elder once said, if not now, when? And if not you, who? Let's change the world together. Thank you.
Jason, where do I sign up to change the world with you, mate? Do I go to Kopus.com? Is that where I go?
Absolutely. KOPUS. Join US.
How are,
us.
How are you, my friend? Thank you for joining us for Q&A.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm absolutely brilliant. I've been watching the different talks and the networking. It's been absolutely phenomenal. So well done to you and your team.
I must admit, mate, that's probably the slickest presentation and possibly the only one that I'm expecting to get OnlyFans in reference into a session. So thank you for that. I'll have to explain that to somebody.
Please do.
I've got a few questions for you, mate. Office space, as you said, is office space at the moment, underutilized. Event venues seem to be very much going the same way, underutilized. I'm sure even Costa Coffee and Starbucks on the high street at some point in time are underutilized venues, not profit making. Do you think that one day we will see office space, co-working space, Monday to Thursday, and maybe event space Saturday and Sunday, maybe even church on Friday and Saturday, maybe even church on Sunday? Do you think we'll get to that point of a multi-function, multi-use, true event venue stroke workplace?
Absolutely. Firstly, those are great lyrics for Craig David's next 7-day song. I absolutely do. And it's interesting because on a recent presentation for investors in Starbucks talked about getting rid of their spaces to get rid of the third space, which they, coined the phrase, the place to go work while having a coffee. By getting rid of that space, they can just serve coffees or move their coffee houses into places that already exist, therefore creating more revenue and spending less on spaces that don't work. So yes, we see Community centers becoming more than just a church once a week. We see libraries not being a place that you point at to your younger generation and explain what they're for. It's a place that hosts Google information just on paper by cut down trees that we actually need to keep the world breathing. So we do see an opportunity for us to go from single serving spaces to spaces that are built for multitude of purposes. Like you said, Monday, Tuesday, it's a community center. Wednesday, Thursday, it's an office space. Friday, Saturday, it's an event space. And Sunday, it's a church or community gathering.
I guess then that brings me on to, we should really be engaging with architects, designers, as the events industry ourselves, as the utilizers of these venues, in the way that they are designed and formed, right? It seems very much that at the moment it's kind of like building firms, construction, architects, they kind of go, well, here's a space and it's this one definition. It seems to me that maybe as a sector, as an industry, because we utilize these venues so widely and for such a variety of different types of events, we should actually be engaging with them and actually partnering with them on the design of those spaces to better suit us, but then also be, used for other types of business activity maybe.
Absolutely. So one of the things we did, one of our first partnerships was the company called Ncube, run by a gentleman called Rishi. And that's exactly what he does. His team goes into a space, normally a box, as we all know, and works out architecturally, how do you turn that space into a multitude of opportunities? How do you have furniture? They can go in the wall and out of the wall. They can move from a chair to a table into a dining set. Like absolutely incredible thinking about accessibility, sustainability, and sort of modular design. And we see that happening more and more as technology has caught up with 3D printers and the kind of IKEA flat pack solutions that we now see at our local IKEA store.
And let's just finally talk a little about Kopus. Mate, I followed your entrepreneurial journey. You're an innovator. You're always thinking kind of like 5 steps ahead. I've been lucky enough to beta test Kopus. You kindly gave me an invite, and I think what you've got is really innovative and really cutting edge. But what do you think is Kopus's USP for the industry? Because I know what others are going to say. They're going to be like, looking, it's just another venue finding website, right? But I know it's totally different to that. So do you mind just kind of giving an overview of what that is from your side of things?
Absolutely. And thank you for asking. It's a great question. I think the first way we are slightly different to anyone else is that you're choosing by activity. It's not location, date, how many people, which is it's a limiting factor. And sometimes also it can be analysis paralysis, right? We say London or New York, the 5th of July, and we're looking at 300 packs. All of a sudden, all these venues pop up. And I'm thinking, well, some of these don't fit a photo studio. Some of these don't fit a launch. So by immediately starting with activity, it brings down my field. The next thing is I can see what is available in real time. And then I don't need to book the whole day, which is another thing. As a venue owner myself and venue owner operator, one of the things I always had a problem with is I'd have a booking for the night, and on the day, I'd still be paying rent and paying for staff and paying for everything else, but I couldn't actually make any money out of it. It's a perishable good, as I mentioned in my speech. So with Kopus, our first sort of attack, if you will, is this idea of choose the activity, choose the dates, immediately get a response. I don't have to wait for the event manager to get back to me. I don't have to wait for a site tour. I don't need it for the whole day. I can choose the amount of hours that I need in that time. And then the price is right there. And then immediately I say pay. The venue gets to have a look at me. The venue can also look to see what kind of a event person am I. The venue can see what my reviews are, because we review our buyers and review our venues. So they can see that I'm a terrible payer, that I bring people who drink too much and smash things up, and I didn't have liability insurance, or whatever it is. It's inside the dashboard. And that's one of the things that was really important to me as someone that owned a space. We'd always have problems. And then later on, I'd be speaking to a venue owner and said, oh, I never would have used those people. They totally smashed up my joint last time they were here. If I'd known that, I wouldn't have taken them in. So that was another big thing that we took on. And this is phase 1 of Kopus. How we see Kopus moving is to really go into an opportunity of immediacy. So right now I have a space, something's dropped out, I put it on, it pops up on my phone, and it tells me, oh, there's actually an opportunity to go and use the gaming suite at Twickenham. And as a gamer, I think, how exciting. And I get all my friends together and we shoot on over. Or we're stuck in another place and we're trying to work out what are we going to do for the next 3 hours. Well, why don't we take over the IMAX and get everyone in there and watch one of our favorite films because it's not making them any money and they've paid for the space. So that's how we kind of see it moving. We started seeing it move from a workplace to event space, and event space, hopefully, into entertainment and all the opportunities that connect everything together.
Awesome. It sounded for a second there like you were describing the Event Technology Awards for some reason. I know we're a rowdy bunch, but I think we've always paid a bill, I must admit. Although I think we've
Absolutely. I'd
probably
love to
drunk
see
the
your
barge by a few
reviews.
times. Well, Jason, it sounds like you are bringing up the whole idea of venue booking up to date with, like you say, with Uber Eats, with all of these other on-demand, instantaneous, get, what is it? How much is it? Let me book it scenarios. And it seems like you're really bringing the events industry up to speed to where it really needs to be, and hopefully driving it even further forward with more developments coming out of Kopus. Mate, as a friend, thank you very much for giving us your time and doing such a fantastic job at delivering a really engaging session. Thank you also for joining us for Q&A. For everybody watching now, or maybe on demand a little bit later on, please do reach out to Jason either through the platform or check it, jump onto kopus.com and check them out there. Jason, thanks once again, and everybody else, we'll see you shortly in the next session.
Sawabona, and thank you so much.